everyone? Welcome back to the Command Your Brand show. I'm your host, Josh Silvestro, brand ambassador of Command Your Brand. We help CEOs and founders get on top-rated podcasts. Definitely check us out at commandyourbrand.com and check us out and find out what podcasting can do for you. So today's episode, I have a very special guest speaker who I'm kind of really fascinated about, and his title is just kind of amazing because, I'm a coffee lover. I just love coffee, and, I'm also a very big proprietor of cool names like, Get Shit Done, And so I'd like to introduce you guys to Frank Selle. Frank, thanks for joining the show, man.
Hey, Josh, man, it's totally my pleasure.
Yeah. So I guess what we'll first start off with, because I know we spoke a little bit before. So I guess for people who don't know who you are, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and also why you decided to start your company?
Yeah, so I'm Frank Selle, Frank Selle the fourth, and my son's the fifth. So we have that hillbilly in our blood. But yeah, so I've been self-employed. This is my 23rd year now, and I followed the plan just like most of us did that grew up back in the 1900s. Our parents told us to get an education or get a trade. I knew an education was not a good investment for me in the traditional sense. I hated school as it was. So I learned a trade. I became a welder, 18 years old, get thrown to the wolves. I'm out there in the manufacturing scene, welding with, full adult men. And so it didn't take long. The last job that I had, I started when I was 18 years old. Valentine's Day, 1994, employee 5331. Haven't had a job for 23 years, but I remember that. The reason why I remember that's because that's what I was told to do growing up. My dad kept telling me, get a trade, get an education. So I got this job, and the goal was the retirement, the 30-year pension, retire, and so on. So 18 years old, I could retire at 48 years old. They had a 30-year retirement. Things were going really good until they sold the company. And then what normally happens, they change benefits package to make profits look good. So it was at that point, I was maybe my earlier mid-20s, and I realized that the dream I had been sold was not a reality. And so at that point, I kind of had a decision to make. Either I had to be willing to accept what they were willing to give me, or I had to take responsibility for my own life and my sovereignty, my future. And so I knew some guys that fixed hail damage on cars. It's called paintless dent repair. We live here in central Kansas. So it's kind of the storm capital, tornado alley, as they say. And I knew those guys made six figures. They made really good money, and they were just working with their hands. And my simple mindset is that my hands are really smart. I've already proven in my mid-20s that I can work hard for somebody else. I can show up, be dependable. So I bought a $100 VHS tape to learn how to fix hail damage on cars, bought some used tools, taught myself, and then eventually in March of 2003, I quit my job and I beat the damn street so hard, I swear I get a bill for the potholes.
Wow, that's amazing. That's just a good story. It's almost like you can be like a not a Disney story, but like kind of a cool, badass story of grown-ups or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is pretty funny when I sit back and look at it, but I know it's kind of comical, but my mindset was, well, I'm Frank fucking Selle. I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. And so did a lot of the things that you did, do you think the jobs that you did and the work ethic that you created for yourself, do you think that helped with you starting your own business in the long run?
Oh, 100%. Like I said, I'd already proven I could sweat my ass off as a welder working 8 to 10 hours a day in the heat. So the work wasn't really an issue. And I didn't know how to describe a lot of these things when I started. All I knew is, the only validation I needed was somebody willing to hand me money for my skill or my product. And so in March of 2003, I just decided, hey, my goal was $100,000 a year. And then next thing is, who do I have to contact? So back then we had the yellow pages. I would open the yellow pages and then look for, body shops, car lots, dealerships. And I would just go around and start introducing myself. Hey, I'm Frank Selle. I started paintless dent repair business. And so through that process, kind of developed, I guess call it like a 5-step process for getting shit done.
Wow. And so for you, what was your passion about the business that you started? Was it more from the work that you did, or just how did that passion led to what you have today?
Well, that there was no ceiling. I could just go as hard as I wanted to, but then also get paid for, more results equals more pay. and I also had the opportunity to just make my own future and my own path.
Hmm. Interesting. And so, was there any point where, like, as a business owner yourself, like, what were the key things that you found that were like that, like, if you were to learn from your earlier time period of yourself, like, if there is there like 4 or 5 things you would give that would actually say, like, this is what I should have done, or what needs to happen in order to have that business?
Yeah, number one, just don't overthink it. People want to, like I said, the only validation you need is somebody, that will pay you for your product or service. And so I think our egos want to trick us to stay small. And so we want to think we have to have it all figured out before we start. That's totally not the case. So I guess looking back on it, one of the biggest things was I had a goal. So get kind of clear on what you really want, what you want to do in life, or why you're doing it.
Hmm.
Like Simon Sinek, start with why. Uh, and then the next thing is, who do I have to contact? So kind of figure out who the people are that could use your product or service, and then contact them. And then it's kind of a process of just adjusting as you go. So I would start out with the yellow pages. I would go to the actual dealership. Then, you have the receptionist or whoever. So after I started reading sales books, then it's like, okay, so who's the decision maker on this right here? So I'm not trying to spend an hour talking to 5 different people. I just go straight to the source. Who makes the decision on who does this work or who gets paid? And I would go see them or find out a good time that they were there. And then, because they're not always there. And so I'd go find out when to go see them, introduce myself, and then just keep repeating the process until they either told me to go away or gave me their work.
Right. And so for you, you obviously mentioned that, you went to the whole school thing and just was not really with it in terms of the school. Does schooling have anything to do with starting a business, or do you have to be in school or be in college to actually have a business?
Oh, totally not. Now, growing up, I was just talking the other day about this. So my dad had been self-employed since 1977, and that was 2 years after I was born. So I really never knew my dad to have a job, always worked for himself. And then my kids have totally never seen me have a job, working, for somebody else, clocking in for somebody else.
Right.
So, you don't have to have the education, really like Think and Grow Rich, The Burning Desire. And so it's kind of goes back to clarity, figuring out what do you really want? Why do you want it? What kind of emotionally fires you up? Because emotion is energy in motion. And just get the train moving, and then you can adjust from there.
Yeah. I know a lot of people too, especially I'm not sure about Kansas, but like especially in New York and New Jersey, like we're all sort of working the 9 to 5 grind. Like sometimes we look even late, we even work later to 8, 9, 10 o'clock, maybe 11,
Mhm.
and so what advice do you give to people, that are, living this dream that is kind of dead a bit, to, people who are younger like myself or other people who feel
Yeah.
stuck in that?
Yeah. So it's a really tricky process of just expect it to take all that you've got, be willing to give more, and
Mm,
allow it to come easy. So it's just as you're going through the process, and obviously I'm a little more older. I'm 50 years old, and I can look back on these things where there are certain times where you're just going to have to put your head down and run through brick walls.
mm,
And sometimes, you have to get a buddy to help you run down through brick walls, will to be more and grow and expand. And sometimes it's just what I call like patience in the pause, because there's some really good books out there. One of them was called Dollars Want Me. And one of the things I picked up out of that book was that, he says that, God is my supply is abundant. And it's not prosperity preaching, but what he's saying is that everything is already created except for the version of you and me that aligns and levels up with the things, the success, the stuff that we want to do.
yeah. Now, I know probably, I'm sure in your case, you probably have some moral values and like a faith background, which I'm sure is pretty much Christian, if I'm right, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. So like for you, like does having those faith and values in terms of being Christian, or, does that actually help with running your company in terms of, from the approach of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, all the way it does. It's from simple stuff like work as if you're working for the Lord and not for man. And it's just things that, there's expectations that are in the world. And so if you come in with some principles. Number one, of just showing up when you say you show up, do what you say you're going to do, and be fair, and treat people the way that you want to be treated. Because I've noticed that over the years, there's people that may not have the quality of work that, say, one person does, but because of their personality and people love having them around, they're always employed, they always have work. So you have to have a balance of, your craftsmanship or your product, whatever it is, plus just showing up and being a good person.
Right. Exactly.
So you have to
And
have
so
that.
for you, like obviously you obviously have your own business. I'm sure you have you mentioned you have your junior, you have also your family. Like how do you actually what are the challenges for you that you come across when you try to balance, entrepreneurship and then also maintain a strong family values and faith?
Yeah. So like one of the biggest challenges is just being where I'm at. There is no balance when I'm at work. It's a really struggle with, especially with social media and phone and messaging. And like in the position I'm in, I have my traditional hail damage business. We have the coffee brand that we're growing. Um, Plus I started an RC car track. I did that growing up. So we have that,
Nice.
um, had that going on. And
Yeah.
so it really is just a matter of kind of prioritizing what's important now and then trying to focus on that one thing. And same thing when I'm at home, try to, you know, s- shove my phone off to the side as much as I can and be present, because that's especially my wife's, love language is quality time. And, fellow,
Mhm.
that's one thing. If you don't know her love language, then learn. There's a book on that.
Yeah. There's fun fact is I just got married in June, so I totally understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for you, you've obviously built something, for what it seems like not just for you, but also your family as well. Like, cause it's just sort of like a family business type thing where at some point, I'm sure your kids are going to want to be in part of it or your kids are going to be running it one day. Like, what do you find is, you know, cause for you, cause a lot of people build a business because they want to, I think a lot of people build businesses to actually build wealth for themselves, but more
Mhm.
specifically for their children to have wealth. I don't know if you had the same thing, but some
Nope.
people would just build it because of that. But what do you think on that?
I had like a really good conversation with the guy that owned one of the body shops I work with on
Mm,
this subject, because it goes back to legacy mindsets, kind of what you're talking about. And, from what I've been taught through mentors and books and so on, is there's like three levels of motivation. And, the first level of motivation is look at my shiny stuff, look at my watch, my car. That's a motivation. And then like, if you're like self-employed or something like that, like look at my name on the building, look at what I've done. We're kind of proud of our accomplishments in life. And he said a
mhm.
third motivation is legacy mindset. And, that couldn't be more real in my life because like you said, I'm Frank Selle. My dad is Frank Selle. My son is Frank Selle. So, all three of us have a standard or I can't think of the word, but accountable to each other to take care of the name Frank Selle.
Yeah,
Um, so it's just a process, of what you wanna do.
yeah, and it's cool too because I think that like you're building a business, especially yourself, and you're I think it's kind of interesting how like your father's done this, you've done this, and I think you're probably your kid's gonna do at one point someday, right? Like where you're actually gonna make something of your own, and not really working for somebody. Because I find, there's some plus points, there's some negative points, but I find that you know, when you're being your own business owner, you have a lot of responsibility and a lot of things you have to take care of in order to have that.
Mhm.
What are some of the challenges that you run into, and like what you do to actually handle those things?
Well, first I wanna go back to the previous question,
Oh yeah.
'cause I actually forgot my damn story. I didn't forget my story, but I forgot to tell the story. So I was
Yeah.
at a body shop, and this is a shop that I've worked with for 20 years. We have a great relationship, and we were talking about, you know, uh, legacy or inheritance and stuff like that. And he was talking about leaving the body shop and the business and all that stuff as an inheritance to his kids. And, he's really focused on what he could leave behind to his kids in a material fashion. And I was just like, man, Arlie, it's like, I really think the inheritance is showing your kids how to create and how to do this to begin with.
Mm,
So that's the real inheritance that can be passed down generation to generation, on how to get shit done, how to make it happen.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. But go ahead.
I was going to say, now, what was this last question you just asked me?
So last question is like, for you, you've obviously built, you build an empire, I would say almost like an empire of like, what you wanted and like how you are building a business, right? Like what are some
Mhm.
of the challenges that you ran into and you were able to handle a lot of those challenges with?
For me, the details.
Mm,
If you ever read the book, The E-Myth, he talks about most people that are entrepreneurs or start their own business. Majority of people are they're in a job and they say, "Well, I can do this better. I'm tired of making my boss money," so they start their own business in the same or similar trade. And he talks about the three hats that we wear. There's the manager, the entrepreneur, and then there's the technician. And what he says, most of the times, people enjoy two of those processes, two of those hats, but the third one usually gets dropped. And so for me, it's the details. I enjoy going out talking to people and the challenge of getting business. I enjoy doing the business, the trade, because it's pretty neat that you can take a car that's beat up with 1,000 hail dents and put it back to factory condition without having to paint it. So it's a very specialized field. But then when it comes down to the details, it just drains me. It drags me down, beats me up, and then
mm,
backs the bus up over me. So one of the things is knowing yourself and being aware, finding your blind spots of what you don't enjoy, but then doing the best you can in that area, but also finding help. A good, like for me, a good accountant, or I have my VA that helps keep me in track and keep things going. So it's just one thing that understand you don't have to do it all forever, but
yeah.
kind of figure out what your blind spot is, what you don't enjoy doing, and then trying to as soon as you can find somebody that can help you out with that.
Yeah. I think it's cool too is that like, you're so knowledgeable in a lot of different areas where like you have to kind of know a little bit about everything. And so
Mhm.
that's when you do it. And then when you have too much to do, then you give it to somebody else to do, right? Like you just are just kind of, you have to be competent in all these areas in order to have a business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, one of the things I try to do is do what I hate, do what I suck at well enough or long enough that I can formulate better questions. That's one of the things I've noticed, especially working with a virtual assistant in the Philippines.
Mm,
My current assistant, she's been with me for years, but a lot of times if you have an overseas assistant, you learn how to think clearly through a process to be able to understand and communicate that to them what you really want.
right. Exactly. That's totally true. And I think also too is that there's a lot of, you know, you have to kind of communicate what you kind of want. And if you don't say what you want, you're not going to get that. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's all about communication and like how you actually communicate those things to other people. For you, like, you've obviously been in this business for many years now. Like you've actually established a lot of things for yourself and also just for your own business.
Mhm.
What I guess for people who are listening, are either, they're either they want to learn more about being in business or they want to actually start their own business, either with coffee or whatever. What do you recommend for people either to read or to what do you recommend in terms of advice you would give them?
Yeah, so Think and Grow Rich is obviously kind of a standard
Mhm.
book for people. I really like The Magic of Thinking Big. Um, I had it laying around here, I don't know, but and then hold yourself accountable. I learned a long time ago that if you're going to read books and so on, write the date on the inside of the cover that you started the book, and then at when you finish the book, write the date on the back cover, and so that way you can kind of go back and say, "Wow, I've read this 5 times." Um,
Wow, you do that each time?
yeah, every time I read,
Wow,
yeah,
that's actually a good idea. I like that.
yeah, it's kind of neat. I can go back and look, and 10 years ago, yeah, I read this book. And another book is Frank Betcher and How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. I really like that book a lot.
Mm, yeah. And so what do you think is a skill, because a lot of people have their own set of skills, maybe some are really good at and some that some people aren't good at. What do you think is the most key thing that any person who wants to start a business, what skills should they have or they should start building?
Um, Man, it's the ability to eat shit and keep moving. It's not everything's going to work out, because a great story example about that is how I said I would go see people. I would find out who do I talk to, go see them, and then continue to see them till they'd either give me the work or they would tell me to go away. So there was a body shop that is local here in town, and I would go see them every month. And so part of this was an awareness issue. It's a learning step in the business, but I walked in, it must have been a Monday or Tuesday morning or something. So I walked in and just, hey man, I'm Frank Selle. And, I was here to see if you guys need help with paintless dent repair. And the old boy's like, no, man, I don't need your help and don't come back again. Quit coming. So, you know, some people could take that personally and beat themselves up. Some people would be confrontational about it. So I just really took it professional, not personal. And when I looked back at it, it was really busy in the office, and I could have just picked up on that right away and come back another time. And so what wound up happening is the following year, that guy retired and his kids took over, and there was a major hailstorm in town, lots of hail damage. And they had an in-house guy that did the repairs at that time. And well, the problem with that is when you're in a specialized field, you need to specialize in that field and that field only to stay proficient, and efficient and so on. And they brought a car in for him to repair. He couldn't repair it. So they called me, wanted to know if I would finish that job for him. And I said, yeah, no problem. Didn't bring up anything about, Pops kicking me out for stopping by and soliciting business and so on. And that was almost 20 years ago. And that summer we did well over $100,000 business with that one shop, just because I didn't take things personal. I took them professional, right, and just rolled with it.
Wow, that's amazing. And also, I love to hear too, like, you've obviously helped so many people with different areas of life and, your business. Mm-hmm. I'm very curious, like, what did you, like, I love to hear some success stories from you, like what you've helped people with. And like, just an example, you don't have to give me a name, but like, I love to hear like somebody you've helped, in your business.
Yeah, it's like the hail damage business. It's really neat, especially when, little old ladies or something, they're, that may not have the money to repair something. So one of the things we do is, it's kind of like a lead loss where door dings, some damage is not insurance paid, hail damage type stuff. It doesn't pay as well, but it's kind of like a lead magnet for me. So I'll do it at a fair price, or even low standard price. Like an elderly lady that her husband passed away. She wanted to get this truck fixed up so she could sell it. It really needed a body shop repair, but I knew I could make it look better and do it. But that's really just like a calling card. So I do that stuff so that when there is a bigger damage or more damage, that's insurance damage, which pays better, then I'm the first person they think about, because I was there and I took care of them, when they had something that wasn't necessarily profitable for me, but I still took care of it for them, just paying it forward.
Right. Now, it's so fascinating too. So, a lot of people need help with a lot of things. It's almost like a timing thing. Like, it's like when the time is right, they sort of just come to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's the part of expected to take all you have, be willing to give more, and allow it to come easy. And it's having that awareness. Everything's already created. So we just have to find out how to get in the flow, get downriver from it and let it roll our way. And especially at the coffee brand, the home of the hustle, I tell people I'm not selling coffee. I'm selling my story, that I bought a $100 videotape and beat the street so hard, I swear I get a bill for the pothole. That's why, if you can see it on video, that's why on our cans, all those quotes are on the cans. And then the one I see people that resonate the most with is like on the side of the can, it says, do it scared until you can do it skilled.
Yeah.
So that comes from a conversation where I guess you could say I was mentoring a friend of mine. He was wanting to start another business. And he told me he was scared. And I was like, well, shit, man, do it scared until you do it skilled. Because my mindset was, I've raced motocross and done a lot of kind of exciting stuff. And, we might hit 100-foot jump, and so you just have to use your best judgment. It's kind of like practicing free throws. You have a really good idea what it's going to take, but you don't know exactly what it's going to take for that first time. And you're throwing yourself 100 feet through the air, maybe 20 feet up in the air. So first few times I'm scared, but by the time I've done it 100 times, I'm actually using that time in the air to relax. I relax my grip. I breathe. I can kind of look around because I'm along for the ride, baby. Ain't nothing changing. So you can actually kind of just be present and relax once you get some repetitions in.
Yeah. It's fascinating that you mentioned that. It reminds me of, just a funny story about me. Like I used to be afraid of heights.
Yeah.
And what's funny is until I did zip lining 100 times, that's why I was like, oh, this is not a big deal. Cause one of the biggest and longest ones is in Costa Rica and you actually have to zip line through. And I'm just like, oh man, like 70 miles an hour going through
Wow.
trees, mountains. I'm like, hell no. But I'm like, I can do that. So it was
Yeah.
actually much easier than when you've done it 100 times and you had done it once.
It's kind of like racing dirt bikes. You see a little 10-year-old kid on a mini bike hitting a big jump and you're on this great big machine. You don't jump. It's kind of the same thing.
Exactly, exactly. And then I guess for you, one that's kind of funny here. I don't know if you get this in Kansas, but I know in New York for sure you get this. We kind of live in a kind of time period where people are sort of in this victimized society. Like you're the victim, you should be getting anything you want, and blah
Mhm.
blah, all that stuff, right? And how do you how do you encourage people to take ownership of their not just their lives, but like just being successful in general?
And it's really tough, because people want to hang on to their identities and personalities. So personally, with my family, my children, we've gone through the shit.
Mhm.
Um, and I have to take personal responsibility um, on a lot of that because it was my decisions on partners and things along the way that led to so much pain. But in the end, it's really tough to get to the point, but to realize, like the Bible says, whatever you call bad, I can call good. So it's understanding that every adversity, every situation is actually a gift if you are willing to take ownership and then um, discern. And so it may be my responsibility. So I call myself the king, the leader of my family. It may not be my fault, but if it's going to get fixed, then it's going to be my responsibility. So taking those things and then understanding they are a gift, they can help you grow. They can make you mentally tougher. They can make you mentally softer because you've developed this armor to be able to discern between what's truth and what is fiction.
Mm.
What is just somebody else. Maybe they're gaslighting. That's a popular term nowadays. Um, and, as you go through life, you'll understand there's multiple kind of narcissists, there's covert,
Yeah,
overt, and understand who you're working with.
yeah,
But really go back and understand your situation. And that's part of, again, the Bible, the sins of the Father, sins of the Son. So we'll use my story, my relation with my father, for example. We have, we love each other. We're pretty much, we're in business together, see each other all the time, but it's a very tumultuous kind of relationship. Like one little spark can kind of set things off. But I go back and I look at his life. And so it's something I call whose thinking are you thinking? And understand that, like the Bible, hell, even Dianetics will say this, like they call it Enneagrams. The energy is passed from generation to generation.
yeah.
Bible says sins of the Father are sins of the Son. So now Dr. Dispenza talks about it, epigenetics and so on. There is energetic programming that gets passed down. So I looked at my father and how he operated in life and just the way I grew up and so on. It's like, you know what? This guy, when he was his dad died when he was 4. His stepdad used to just beat the crap out of him for no reason. And I just kind of question that, because you're okay, because I never got really beat when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So you don't really can't relate. But then for one day out of the blue, like my aunt come in and we were talking and she's like, "Yeah, I don't know what it was, man, but stepdad would just start whooping on them boys." And so my dad left home at 14 because he wasn't going to put up with that. And so you look at that, and so for my dad, love meant safety and money in a house, a home. So there wasn't any kind of touchy feely empathy growing up for me.
Mm.
But I look back at my dad's life and nobody beat me. I had a roof over my head. I had plenty to eat. I may not have Nikes, but I had ponies, that kind of stuff. So you look back on it and he had never grown beyond that little boy that got beat and had to survive. So survival was love to him. Um, and so looking back on it, I was like, okay, so he did the best he could do. And that's what his paradigm, that's what his worldview of love is provision, of just material things, food, house, clothing, stuff like that. And so like one day out of the blue, it came to me. And so it's, you, a lot of times you'll catch thoughts, and it's important to kind of catch, when you catch one, act on it sometimes. Like if you think of somebody's name comes across your head, shoot them a text or call them. Well, this thought come across my head, looking at my dad and looking at my childhood and our life. I was like, I don't know if anybody's ever told my old man that they're proud of him.
Yeah.
And so I just stopped what I was doing. I walked over. I was like, you know what, Dad? I was like, man, I'm really proud of you for where you came from and what you've done and what you've grown in business and stuff like that. That's really cool. And man, he teared up because he's like, nobody has ever told me they're proud of me.
Yeah.
So
wow.
it's just being aware of, not everything is as it seems, and practicing that discernment.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Frank, I really appreciate the time you've given us on asking a lot of these questions and just learning about you, who you are, and what you do. Before we end here, I'm just very curious, where can people find and reach out to? Because I know you have also a gift you want to give out, but is there a place that people can reach out and find you?
Yeah, the best, so our website and the gift would be homeofthehustle.com/podcast. We have the 5 steps that I talked about. They're drawn out and explained in a little more depth. And of course, Frank Selle Jr. on social media, or real Home of the Hustle on social media.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the time you've given us in learning about who you are and, also how to build a business. Because I think a lot of people today want to build a business, but I think it's that initial fear of starting one and just getting it rolling. Because, it's like, it's all about that responsibility of how can I take that,
Yeah, 100%. And like the book, The Magic of Thinking Big, when it says action cures fear. So it's just get in action, get shit done.
Exactly. Well, Frank, it was good talking to you, and I thank everyone here for listening to this episode. If you guys like this, please like and subscribe and hit the smash button. I think you guys would like this, okay? And Frank, I will see you around.
That's been my pleasure.